Police failure to follow procedures ruled as not contributing to man who died after falling unresponsive in police custody. Highly skilled and advanced Greater Manchester police driver turns things on its head. Literally. West Midlands Police Chief defends delay in releasing attacker's description while admitting it took half an hour for police to respond. This and more coming up. Don't forget these reports are daily, Monday to Friday. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you appreciate the work I do, please consider joining the channel Patreon for as little as just £3 per month to help me continue providing this content. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. It's Tuesday the 15th of September 2020. An inquest has heard that a man who died in police custody in 2018 suffered serious mental health problems and told the police he couldn't breathe as they restrained him. Kevin Clark warned police, "I'm going to die," as he was being arrested. The man was put into 2 sets of handcuffs but was ignored and then lost consciousness as he was taken to an ambulance. The 35-year-old, a relapsing paranoid schizophrenic, had been living at the nearby Jigsaw Project, a residential support service, for about 2 years, up until his death at Lewisham Hospital on March the 9th, 2018. He had been seen by Metropolitan Police earlier that day, but was not sectioned despite concerns from staff at Jigsaw. An inquest at Southwark Coroner's Court heard officers were later called again and Mr Clark was found lying on the ground at the edge of a school playing field. PC Lee Pidgeon told the inquest Mr Clark had begun to get a bit fidgety and the use of handcuffs to restrain him was appropriate as he was showing signs of acute behavioural disorder. This was unusual behaviour, he said, and it was obvious to me Mr Clark needs urgent medical attention. It suggested to me that perhaps he was getting a bit unnerved, maybe he's starting to get a second wind. If he had got to his feet with increased strength, there was a possibility that one of us could have been hurt or he could have run off. Police placed Mr Clark in 2 sets of handcuffs due to his size, and in the footage, which I've not seen, he could be heard groaning, saying, "I can't breathe and I'm going to die." Mr Pidgeon said he had not heard what Mr Clark said at the time, but admitted that in the footage his speech seems quite clear and comprehensible. When asked by coroner Andrew Harris why Mr Clark was ignored by the police in attendance, PC Pidgeon replied, "I cannot answer that, sir. I don't know." He added his priority was to get Mr Clark to the ambulance as soon as possible as he was in need of urgent medical attention. PC Pidgeon said Kevin had collapsed at that point. He's probably lost consciousness. At that point, I just wanted to get him to the ambulance. That was my sole goal. That was paramount for me. I think the position that Mr Clark was in, if we took his cuffs off, we're wasting valuable time. But Leslie Thomas, the family counsel, said it was blatantly apparent that Mr Clark was having difficulty breathing and the force used was completely disproportionate. Mr Thomas also highlighted multiple factors that may have put Mr Clark at a heightened risk of asphyxia, such as his weight, body position and the stress of the situation. He said Mr Clark demonstrated no signs of aggression that warranted restraint, adding it should have been a last resort. Referencing the video footage that was shown, he said Mr Clark is not quite with it, but the female officer she goes to up to Kevin. He takes hold of her hand. She says, "You're hurting me." And what does Kevin do? He lets go. I think we can all agree that at no stage before you laid hands on him had he been aggressive. Mr Pidgeon said he believed restraint was necessary and safe for Mr Clark at the time he had followed correct police training procedures. "I feared for Kevin and myself and my colleagues," he said. He said the incident has caused him to reflect on his course of action. "I think it's fair to say, yes, it affected me," he said. "I would think twice about handcuffing someone with mental health issues because of this incident. I think that everyone was doing their jobs, but there could have and should have been better interaction between ambulance and officers." The inquest continues, but I'm sure it will just be listed as a tragic accident and the police will get some management training, as so many often do. As with this next case. An investigation by IOPC into the death of another man who died after collapsing, this time in Staffordshire police custody, has blamed the death of the man taking an overdose of paracetamol before he was arrested. However, the probe into the death of 35-year-old Ian Deitch has also found police did not follow proper procedure before finding him unresponsive. The investigation found there was no immediate medical examination when he was taken into custody, despite him appearing to have taken drugs or to have mental health problems. This, as well as the fact he was not regularly roused despite being placed under observation, was contrary to official force procedure. Ian had been arrested where he lived in Cannock late on April 29, 2018 and detained at the Watling Street custody facility. He was found to be unresponsive during a medical check at his cell at around 7:45 a.m. the following day. The ambulance took him to New Cross Hospital in Wolverhampton, where he died on May the 8th. An inquest which finished on Thursday, September the 10th, gave the cause of death as paracetamol-induced liver failure, and the coroner concluded Mr. Deitch had killed himself whilst mentally unwell. The IOPC concluded there was no evidence to suggest the actions of police caused or contributed to the death of Mr. Deitch. However, it did find that 2 custody sergeants had a case to answer for misconduct in relation to breaches of force policy and procedure, which oddly enough would have contributed to his death, because if they had followed procedure, the man could well have been given medical attention much sooner, which could have saved his life. Although I'm no medic, I'm pretty sure that early intervention could have had a positive impact on the outcome. Staffordshire Police agreed that 2 custody sergeants had a case to answer for misconduct, and after the cases were proven, the constables received management advice. IOPC Regional Director Derek Campbell said, "I would again like to extend my sympathies to Mr. Deitch's family and everyone else affected by his death. When someone dies in such circumstances, it is important for public reassurance that police actions are scrutinised." Staffordshire Police Deputy Chief Constable Emma Barnett said, "We are aware of the significant impact that Ian's death and the subsequent investigation and inquest must have had on his family, and our sympathies remain with them." The inquest into the death of Ian in hospital in May 2018 following his arrest in April 18 has concluded he died as a result of the effects of paracetamol tablets he had taken before his arrest. As a result of the IOPC's investigation prior to the coroner's court hearing, 2 sergeants and 3 custody detention officers who were on duty at the time of Ian's detention were dealt with via management advice in the form of words of advice for not complying with police force policy and procedures. A further police officer and custody detention officer were found to have no case to answer. "We have made changes to our custody procedures in such circumstances and ensured that learning is shared with those responsible for caring for the well-being of those in detention." Well, good for you. Key staff, or people working in stores that are allowed to remain open, are calling for better protection and for COVID rules to be more effectively policed. One Sainsbury's worker, 17-year-old Hayley Sterry, says that she has been spat at, coughed on and verbally abused while working at the checkouts. She said, "We want to be safer and have everyone following the rules, but we have no say in the slightest. People blame the workers and not the company. It's crazy. No one wants to ask customers to wear face masks if they haven't got one on. It's not worth it." But surely Sainsbury's, like other supermarkets, have put up plastic barriers, are limiting the direct contact they have with shoppers, while of course wearing their own masks, as they're also obviously concerned about catching COVID. Oh wait, they don't have to wear them, do they? Maybe it would be simply better to concern yourself with how you protect yourself and others rather than how other people are, especially seeing as you don't know if they are simply refusing to wear one or if they're genuinely exempt. Over 75% of shop workers surveyed by the Shop Workers Union, US Door, last month reported being abused by customers when asking them to socially distance. Almost half had experienced abuse triggered by reminding shoppers to wear face masks. I refer you back to my previous comment. Maybe it would be simply better to concern yourself with how you protect yourself and others rather than how other people are, especially seeing as you don't know if they are simply refusing to wear one or if they're genuinely exempt. Doug Russell, US Door's Health and Safety Officer, said, "We are concerned that the already high levels of violence and abuse against shop workers have doubled as a result of the coronavirus crisis. While retailers and their staff should do what they can to encourage people to comply, they cannot enforce the rules. They do not have the powers to do so, and it would be unsafe to expect shop staff to police the system." Paul Gerard, the Co-op's Director of Campaigns and Public Affairs, said the level of crime and antisocial behaviour is at unacceptable levels, and the wearing of face masks is a further flashpoint. Shop workers deserve to be treated with respect. as do the public pool, and unfortunately questioning them about their lack of face mask is not respecting their right under the rules to not wear one. Although I do understand that some of you will say about the respect of others who do want to protect themselves, and in this case I simply recommend that those who don't wear a mask, for whatever reason, be mindful and keep their distance from others as a sign of respect. However, I do believe that, especially as the deaths from COVID are literally non-existent in comparison to what they were before, if people who want to be protected keep wearing their masks and washing their hands, then there shouldn't really be any issues for them. In statements, Asda, Tesco and Sainsbury's made clear that customers would be encouraged to wear masks, but that staff would not be asked to challenge them. A spokesperson from Waitrose added, government guidance states that it is not the responsibility of retailers to enforce the wearing of face coverings by customers when in shops. However, our partners have been and will continue to remind customers of the requirement. Liverpool's Mayor, Joe Anderson, is leading calls to allow local authorities the power to enforce legislation designed to keep the public safe, but that the ability to close down businesses where face masks or social distancing rules are not adhered to, or allowing council officers to issue on-the-spot fines. Which was only a matter of time before this was requested, seeing as councils currently face an £85 million COVID Marshall Bill to pay for busybodies to go around interfering with people as they go about their day. So they have to recoup some of that expenditure somehow, won't they? Siwan Hayward, Director of Compliance and Policing at Transport for London, said it's important to remember that you will never see 100% of people wearing a face covering, be it staff or customers. There's a significant segment of the population who have very legitimate reasons and are exempted from wearing the face coverings. Which I have to say is one of the few times I've actually heard an official say this. But the problem is most people are forgetting this and simply challenging everyone they see without a face mask, which is what's causing these confrontations. I don't know, but I think the moral of this is that providing you are doing what you need to do to keep yourself protected, then what others are doing is none of your business. I know some of you will disagree, but I will of course continue to stand for your right to do just that. Could Greater Manchester Police be trying to one-up the West Midlands Police in the police car crash derby? Yesterday we mentioned how West Mids Police ran up £750,000 worth of written off police cars at around one a week. Yesterday we find a Greater Manchester police car on its roof after it overturned during a pursuit in Aldenshaw. The incident happened at a junction between Aldenshaw Road and Ash Street at around 7 p.m. Witnesses said on social media that the police car flipped over following a pursuit in the area. Police were chasing a red car, a witness wrote in a Facebook post. Passengers of the car bailed at speed, then the driver slammed on to do a runner, and the police car collided with it and flipped. The dangers of tailgating, eh? Greater Manchester Police later said they were called at around 6:15 to reports of a carjacking at Knife Point on Brookhill Close in Oldham. Responding officers became engaged in a pursuit of the suspected offending vehicle, and a tactical collision took place on Aldenshaw Road. Doesn't sound like a tactical collision when the other car is said to have slammed its anchors on and the police car went into the back of it and flipped. Just saying. A police officer suffered minor injuries as a result of the collision and did not require hospital treatment. The victim of the carjacking wasn't injured but was left understandably shaken, they added. Highly skilled. It's been suggested that if the rule of 6 fails to be adhered to, then there could be a national curfew that could see bars and restaurants close at 10 p.m. The rule of 6 was introduced Monday following a supposed spike of coronavirus cases. Not deaths, cases. And some reports have suggested that the government could bring in tougher measures. According to The Telegraph, a curfew that would see bars and restaurants told to shut at 10 p.m. is the next obvious step in the fight against coronavirus if current restrictions fail. The source told the publication a national curfew is the obvious next step if the numbers keep rising, despite all the steps we are currently taking. But we are not at that stage at the moment, and hopefully the action we are taking locally to contain outbreaks where they occur will mean we don't have to go that far. Justice Secretary Robert Buckland also spoke about the issues, telling Sky's Sophie Ridge on Sunday, "I think that, as you've seen, we've been very prepared to move quickly where necessary and where the evidence points us. I think there's an issue about social occasions and social events, and particularly young people getting together and enjoying themselves, sometimes a bit too much, and forgetting the importance of the rules. I think it would be idle of me to speculate as to what measures we might have to bring in as we approach the winter. He also added that another nationwide lockdown would be a nuclear option, saying, as the Prime Minister said, going to a national lockdown would indeed be a nuclear option. I think here in autumn 2020, knowing much more as we do now about the nature of COVID, but still without a vaccine, we have to take a range of measures, which of course include enhancing testing, localised measures, and indeed the rule of 6. I think the British public know now, by taking a combination of different measures, we can get through this period. Although it has not yet been confirmed whether the government have been discussing introducing a national curfew at the moment. A Police Scotland constable, 26-year-old PC Lee Ford-Logie, has appeared at Dundee Sheriff Court to submit a plea of not guilty of driving carelessly and causing a collision and of injuring his colleague. It is alleged that PC Ford-Logie failed to comply with the red light while responding to an emergency call. He allegedly proceeded through the red light at excessive speed and caused a collision with another car, damaging both vehicles. Due to the not guilty plea, a trial has been fixed for March next year. West Midlands Police Chief Constable Dave Thompson has admitted it took police 30 minutes to respond to one of the Birmingham stabbings, while he still defends the 18-hour delay in issuing CCTV of the suspect. 23-year-old Jacob Billington was stabbed to death while returning from a night out in Birmingham city centre in the early hours of Sunday, September the 6th. One person still remains critically ill, while 6 others were injured in a spree that lasted around 90 minutes. West Midlands Police Force faced criticism over the response time, inability to find the suspect on the night, and delay in handing out a description of the suspect. Addressing the police's response time, Chief Constable Thompson revealed it took police 30 minutes to arrive on the scene of the second attack in Livery Street, where a teenager and woman had been stabbed. Officers arrived at the 3 other scenes within 11 minutes. Concerns were also raised that the attack was allowed to carry on for nearly 2 hours. Birmingham MP Khalid Mahmood told The Times after the attack, "We've got to look at the fact he had 2 hours to run around the city centre, which has a huge amount of CCTV cameras in place. Where was the monitoring? Both the public and police were put at further risk." Speaking yesterday, Chief Constable Thompson said there has been some criticism of the force because there's a belief the suspect was allowed to wander around the city of Birmingham for 2 hours between the first and final attack. The first 3 victims attacked were reported to police between 12:31am and 12:52am on the 6th of September. At 1:23am, the initial investigation identified links between the 2 incidents. It was then almost an hour's gap until the next 2 attacks were reported to police. They were reported at 1:50 and 1:59. Evidence presented to the court in this case will allege the suspect left the city centre after the first 3 victims were attacked, returning to another part of the city centre around an hour later, where it's alleged the second 2 incidents took place. This addresses why the prime suspect was not located between the 2 sets of incidents. As you will know, we always try to find suspects immediately after the incident. This is not always possible, as complex cases like this demonstrate. The police chief defended the force's decision to wait until 7pm on Sunday night to issue CCTV images of the suspect. He said, in deciding whether to release the details of the suspect, senior police balanced the risk to the public, the vague nature of the description that we had at that stage, and the risk of well-intended but inaccurate reports of sightings alongside what were already active lines of inquiry. This was also influenced by the absence of a good quality CCTV image that would assist identification. We shared images of the suspect at 7pm on the 6th of September. These were the best images secured during the investigation throughout that entire day. They were downloaded from a private CCTV camera system when we secured those images at 5:30pm. The suspect was arrested at 4am on Monday the 7th of September, 26 hours after the final attack, but can send police almost immediately to check people's thinking over their Facebook or Twitter posts. He said, "I believe the decisions on releasing details around the suspect have been well considered, reasonable, and ultimately assisted the investigation to reach its conclusion." Thompson reiterated the attacks were not terror related, but did say the National Counter-Terrorism Police would debrief the incident as policing and our partners seek to refine the joint agency response to marauding attacks. Speaking after the Chief Constable's statement, West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, that muppet, David Jamieson, said some of the criticism that was received shortly after the event was seriously uninformed and very unhelpful from people that should actually know better. Perhaps I hope some of these people who made that criticism, and some of them were people who were elected to Parliament, they should actually reflect on what they said and revise how they react in the future. Last Thursday, the guy who did the stabbing appeared at Birmingham Crown Court charged with the murder of 23-year-old Jacob Billington and attempting to kill 7 others. The judge heard allegations that McLeod, which is his surname, 27, did not remain in the city centre throughout the hour-and-a-half rampage during which 5 separate incidents unfolded. McLeod has been remanded in custody until a hearing next month, with a 3-week provisional trial date for February 22nd next year. Big thank you to all of the channel supporters, especially channel patron supporters. Your support is truly appreciated and massively helps continue with this channel. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, please share, please comment and please subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police, and of course, other officials. Good night, all. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video, there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.